I'm joined by Professor Claire Booth, and we're going to discuss, I suppose, challenges and perspectives on gene therapy, leaning on your experience as a academic at UCL, but also a consultant immunologist at the Great Ormond Street Hospital. So, Claire, would you like to give yourself a quick introduction?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me to come and talk today. And I'm kind of coming at this really more from the gene therapies for rare diseases aspect. I mean, that's where my experience lies. So I'm a clinical academic. I'm a pediatric immunologist, as he said, by training. But I got into the gene therapy field about 20 years or so ago now through my PhD, and have really been really privileged to work on a number of first-in-human clinical trials of stem cell gene therapy, growing my own lab group to develop new therapies, and then more recently becoming more interested in the access aspect of gene therapies. And we've got these amazing treatments, so how do we get them to people?
Yeah, definitely. No, it's an enormous challenge. So what motivates you to do the work that you do?
Well, I mean, there's a few things actually, and some obvious. I mean, the main thing is the patients. Mm-hmm. As a clinician, you're able to really close that whole bedside to bench to bedside loop. So I can see a patient in clinic, and somebody who's lacking an alternative treatment, you can develop a treatment for that, and then you get to see the results afterwards. And I mean, really, I've looked after more than 100 kind of patients who've been treated by gene therapies now, and the results, like, you can't describe how transformative they are for patients and their families. So that's a huge main push. Yeah. The scientific curiosity around disease mechanism and how we can alter that is really interesting for me as well.
Yeah,
having that sort of academic and clinical side, but really also being part of a very committed team, both at UCL, the Institute of Child Health, and Great Ormond Street. It takes a huge team to deliver these things. So we have a team that's made up of preclinical scientists doing all that research, and then translational scientists taking it to GMP and manufacturing the products for our patients, project managers, quality people, research nurses. I mean, it's just a whole
big team. Very disciplined.
Yeah,
working.
And everybody's so committed. But I think, again, motivated and driven by the fact that we can see such an impact from these therapies.
Yeah, I know that. I think the science is fantastic, and these therapies present truly a transformative approach. And as a parent myself, if one of my children was ill, I'd want to know that there is an avenue of treatment or hopefully a cure for them. But the challenge is, I suppose, really being able to deliver that promise. So I suppose what do you see as the primary challenges in delivering these gene therapies and rare disease treatments to the patients?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, there've definitely been challenges along the way, and I don't think really anymore it's so much the scientific challenges. We've demonstrated for a number of these technologies and platforms that they work.
Yeah.
And they work in the long run. So I think that's good. I guess it's maybe a little bit more in the delivery.
Yeah.
And I guess it comes down to a few things. I mean, one is around about the sort of manufacture, the complexity of the manufacture for one thing. But I think, we've got really good infrastructure now and facilities that can kind of manage that. And I think we have improved there. But the cost of manufacturing these products is still, a big issue. And then how they're reimbursed. And I know lots of different groups working on, how can we bring down the cost of reagents? How can we change the protocols so that we use less reagents? Bringing down the costs in that way. And I think, we've made some progress, but it doesn't feel like we've made a huge leap in that. And then, the reimbursement is another discussion.
Yeah.
I mean, I think actually in the UK, we're lucky we've got a single payer system. It's a little bit easier, I think, than in other countries to discuss reimbursement. And we've seen, actually, we're in a positive position because we've had a number of gene therapies approved and reimbursed. So Casgevy, Zolgensma, Upstaza, Livmeldy, loads of these. And I guess it's just going to take maybe a little bit of a shift in thinking for the reimbursement.
Yeah.
As we're now seeing the durable effect of some of these treatments. So, we've got hundreds of patient years follow-up now for a number of these different treatments. So really showing that they do work in the long run, they're essentially curative.
Yeah.
And so if you can then kind of with confidence build that into the health economic kind of argument and discussion, some of these high-cost therapies can be cost-effective.
Yeah.
I guess it's just thinking about different ways of paying so that it's not necessarily, it may not be an upfront payment. I know that people are looking at lots of different models, but I mean, I think for me, that's the main challenges, the practicalities and the science. I think we've made huge progress there.
More like the foundation, the structure that's going to be built around that to actually deliver the therapy. Yeah. And I think you recently, or the MHRA recently released a paper kind of streamlining the approval of rare disease products. So hoping to be able to kind of push them through the kind of regulatory steps so they can get there faster and ultimately more cost effective. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, no, this is a really exciting piece of work I've been lucky to be involved in. I mean, MHRA, I think, has always been quite progressive in thinking. And with the sort of mRNA therapies, cancer vaccines, and has always had a focus on rare disease.
Yeah.
And, so this is a rare disease consortium that's been brought together, as you say, to really try and speed up and facilitate the access to these therapies. And I think really trying to encompass all kinds of rare disease therapies, so N-of-1 therapies, RNA technologies, ex vivo therapies, so all of these. And really looking at not just streamlining, the process, but really focusing on early interaction to discuss with developers, what's the expectation for certain for your trial. Looking at even the new concept of an investigative marketing authorization, which kind of can encompass that whole process from clinical trial through to MA. Being able to use things like prior knowledge, master files potentially to, again, reduce the burden on developers and de-risk some of these strategies. And I think crucially in the context of rare disease, being able to incorporate real-world evidence, so the collection of real-world evidence in that process. Because often, we are talking about some of the ultra-rare diseases where there's so little kind of information around about that. Comparators and natural history and things that this could be a real game changer, I think, for people working in this area, and importantly for patients who are don't have a treatment available at the moment.
No, I think it's fantastic, and I think if you're a therapy developer, that you're always in a resource constrained, very risky environment, and so anything that can be done to reduce the burden on them ultimately be able to progress therapies to patients is a fantastic step. And I think in the UK, we do have quite an agile and innovative regulator, as we've seen around some of the legislation around decentralized manufacturing and approaches such as there. So having a regulator that's able to kind of respond to a very fast-moving field is hugely important.
I mean, I think, you said it's the flexibility, but also the proportionate review of some of these medicines, and really being able to incorporate a risk benefit that centers around the patient as well. And I think that is something that MHRA, they do really well.
Fantastic. It's fantastic. I suppose from my perspective as not a clinician, I'm a work in business development, but I'd see almost, if you have a child with a rare disease, it's almost like the medicine that will be given to that child is currently with the technology and the systems that we have will always have an experimental approach to it. And so it would be great if we could move to a more platform approach where maybe perhaps 90% of the manufacturing platform is kind of been de-risked, and you're only really changing a small amount of it. So be able to produce a medicine for a very small patient population, but have a much shorter and cost-effective development path. So do you agree with that? Do you see that? Is that a direction we could ever travel in?
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that's trying to be incorporated and considered. I mean, we've seen recently the releases from the FDA around this use of move towards platform technology. I think it is. With the right kind of guide rails in place, it's going to be a really useful technology. A really useful platform. But I mean, I think you just hit on a bit, like that these therapies are always going to be experimental to a certain extent. Well, I do think that's true. But with the earlier technologies, like the lentiviral technologies, which I work with, mostly, actually, we've just got huge amounts of safety and efficacy data, and we understand that platform really well now. So actually, when I'm counselling patients for a trial or for special use or treatment with one of these, I'm pretty confident actually that I can get across what I consider to be like the true risks and benefits of this therapy.
Yeah.
And I think that's just important moving forward with newer technologies, is just being able to say to patients, this is as much evidence as we have.
Yeah.
This is what we think is going to be the outcome. And these are the things that we're worried about and we're going to monitor for.
Yeah.
And just that kind of transparency. But actually, if you look back, some of these technologies are pretty mature now.
Yeah. Yeah. So bioprocessing, ability to grow cells is obviously been heavily de-risked through antibody production. But I suppose, I think as an organization, we see exactly the same thing. The science is very effective and is truly fantastic. But the ability to be able to deploy that at any kind of scale is the real challenge. And so that's why we're focusing on not so much kind of the reagents, but the technologies to actually manufacture at scale and reproducibility. So how can you bring in automation and robotics and like digital platforms that are able to pull together lots of kind of manufacturing pieces under one envelope?
Yeah.
It's still quite paper-based and costly.
But I mean, that's a super point, because I mean, it's not so much in my area of rare disease, but the MHRA also moving towards point of care, approvals. I mean, I think for many other kind of different diseases, that could be a real significant step forward as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think also you can't always have my view on it would be a one size fits all approach, a purely commercial effort to develop cell and gene therapies might not fit every type of disease. So you might need to have, for example, a more academic-led approach with a network of not-for-profit sites versus a kind of like blockbuster drug. We need a drug that's going to make pharma companies significant amounts of profit.
Yeah. I mean, I think actually the UK, again, has always had a really strong heritage in collaboration between academia and industry, and even like the NHS as well. And that's really, I think, one of the UK strong points.
Yeah.
And potentially, public-private partnerships is something that maybe we don't explore here.
Yeah. To
its full potential in our area.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit more about that. And sort of because I always think that's incredibly interesting. Different kind of business models and approaches to bring industry along, but also kind of unite with infrastructure that is maybe kind of more not-for-profit or academic. Is there anything you can kind of see in that space, or any kind of low-hanging fruit approaches that would be particularly beneficial from the work that you've done?
This is definitely not my area. But I think what I have seen, like I said, I've been in this kind of area for almost 20 years now. And actually, the way that industry and academia have interacted has changed over that time. And it still seems quite a sort of fluid, dynamic relationship. Before when we started, it was very much that things were developed in academia. You did your preclinical, your clinical trials. And when you had some data, then you partnered up and you took things forward. And over time, we've seen the commercial partners coming in earlier and earlier, which has been super beneficial for, I think, academic developers as well, to enable us to understand what's needed at that endpoint. Because I think perhaps, a few years ago, that it was, academics maybe didn't understand quite so well what was required at the end in terms of commercialization. And so I think that has been really beneficial. But obviously, it's the investment capacity that's fluctuating a bit at the moment. And so, I'm interested to see how it's going to evolve. But we've seen some amazing things come out of public-private partnerships before with the Vertex and CF consortium and stuff. And so, I think, it's something that maybe we like I say, don't explore enough.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's definitely room for kind of collaborative, pre-competitive approaches to kind of hopefully develop technologies that can be utilized to stop silos emerging and everybody having to kind of start from square one independently. Having kind of a common starting point maybe, but still being able to protect companies' core IP, even though you're not having to build a manufacturing platform completely from scratch. So we for example, developed an AAV platform that we tech transferred to a number of sites for that purpose. And I think kind of approaches like that could hopefully help, again, the companies working in that space in very resource-constrained settings, having to kind of make huge capital expenditure to develop something that's essentially already there.
I mean, I think we've talked quite positively about things so far. And I guess just talking about that sort of partnership I guess in our rare disease field, we've been slightly on the other end where we really benefited from the investment from companies in the area. But obviously there's been a lot of disinvestment recently and companies pivoting away from ultra-rare disease indications to something that's going to be more commercially feasible, which is completely understandable from their point of view. I think, so what I'm really interested in is trying to figure out, well, how do we keep that relationship sustainable? But also, how do we not lose things that have been developed through that partnership? Because that's what we've kind of seen in our area, in that some of these therapies, which you've shown to be super effective, now aren't able to be given to patients, and that they're kind of sitting on the shelf, which is probably the worst situation to be in. So forging forward with that, and we've seen some movement there as well with San Rafael in Milan. They've Telethon Foundation. They've they just got the approval for the Wiscott gene therapy a couple of weeks ago, which is amazing. And at Great Ormond Street Hospital, we're running a project to see if if an NHS trust, could be a marketing authorization holder for some of these therapies. To do it, because ultimately we appreciate that all of these rare disease indications aren't going to be of interest to companies, but if they do start work in that area, then how do we capitalize on that effort that's been expended?
So if they've started on one disease but pivoted to another higher value area, how can we make sure that the disease to the sort of ultra rare condition still progressed?
And so, if you think about the sickle market, there was many different players that were involved and did trials, developed slightly different technologies for that, and again, pulled out of the race, and you've got a couple of forerunners coming through, but there's so much sort of learn around that technology that was sort of put on the side. And I know there are groups around like Global Gene Therapy Initiative and stuff, trying to work to see how those technologies and those therapies can be put to use, not instead of being shelved. But I think it's an important kind of social and ethical consideration for the
I think ethically, if you have a treatment that works, it should be given to the patient. And so it's, I suppose, up to the community and the ecosystem to find a way to make that happen.
Yeah. I think we will.
Yeah, I am too. I'm confident we will.
Yeah.
All right, brilliant. Thank you so much. So I suppose to play some of that back, I think it strikes me from our conversation that there's a brilliant framework. We've got great science underpinning the sector, and a fantastic team of people ultimately delivering that. But significant challenges kind of still remain, for some to do with technology. Being able to reduce the cost of goods and make it kind of a more favourable environment for companies to operate in. And then there's probably some structural infrastructure bits in there as well.
Yeah, perfect summary. And I think, again, just highlight that, actually in the UK, we're doing pretty well at this. I mean, I think we've always been, at the forefront in this field. And I think we continue to be really, like you said, the investment in the infrastructure, the ecosystem that we have, the science that we generate.
Yeah.
We should be proud.
Yeah, I think so too. All right. Brilliant. Well, thank you ever so much for all the work you do. And it's been lovely talking.
Oh, thank you.